Hi everyone, A Loving Soul here, hope this video finds you well. If you haven't heard, there has been a new ban list and I'm very excited for it. We're going to mostly be focusing on one part of the ban list. I think a lot of folks have talked about stuff like Grass and Dark Lords, but I really want to talk about the no longer on the list section. More specifically, I'm going to be talking about Fur Hires. Wiz Sage Fur Hire is finally being unlimited, and I want to explore some future builds as well as current builds and give a refresher to all the folks about the Fur Hire archetype. And let's get into it. Alrighty, let's do a quick refresher for those who don't know about the Fur Hire archetype. Fur Hires were introduced into Duel Links in the Clash of Wings mini box. It was an extremely potent and popular meta deck at the time because you could pretty much build the entire deck out of the single mini box. It also didn't hurt that the box included Widespread Ruin, which was a pretty good backer at the time. Essentially, in battle phase, you flip it up, you destroy their highest attack monster. This was particularly good. It had a good interaction against masked heroes. They couldn't, masked hero players really didn't have a good way to get around this with mask change because it would blow up, the highest attack monster. So the only way a masked hero player could really get around that was mask changing into a defense mode Anki. And as you can see, Anki only has 1200 defense, so that's not a very optimal play. So let's talk about Fur Hires. Their whole archetype is all about swarming the board. They're essentially one big furry family besides Wiz, which is obviously a little bit more slimy. She has that slimy vibe going about. But essentially all the small Fur Hires, so we have Beat, Seal, Dompa, and Recon, they all have the ability to special summon one other Fur Hire from your hand. And typically when a Fur Hire is special summoned, they have some positive effect. So let's go over all of the small Fur Hires first. So starting with Beat, this is your main starter card. His bonus is when some other Fur Hire gets special summoned, you get to search for another Fur Hire from your deck. Oftentimes you'll be looking for a missing piece. Then we have Seal. Seal is like the counterpart to Beat, but instead of getting a search from the deck, he recycles a Fur Hire from your graveyard. This is especially relevant because, as you can see, some of the Fur Hires are limited, so we have to make the most out of our resources. He's also the beefiest of the small Fur Hires at 1600 attack. Next, we have the semi-limited Dompa. He has 500 attack, but he has the ability to pop up any face-up card, not just monsters, so you can destroy something like Dark Magician's Circle. And Dompa's counterpart is Recon. Recon, instead of face-ups, you can pop any face-down card. So that's all of the small Fur Hires. We got them out of the way. Let's look at the boss monsters of the archetype. First, we have the limited to 1 boss monster, Dyna. He's our beefiest attacker at 2500 attack. He also gets to banish cards in the enemy graveyard when he's special summoned up to the number of Fur Hires on the board. So you're usually going to be banishing 2 or 3 cards. This can be handy against decks that get extra resources in the grave, maybe something like a Bacon Saver from a zombie deck. He also has this magnet effect in battle. Your opponent has to target him before they can attack your little Fur Hires. That's pretty useful. And a fun fact about this second effect is that one of the reasons why he's limited to 1 is that if you had 2 Dynas on the board, your opponent couldn't battle at all, and this was called Dynalock. Finally, let's talk about the card that is getting released from the ban list. We have Wiz Sage Fur Hire. Wiz has obviously a very respectable 2800 defense. That's pretty good in a metagame that's, has a lot of 2500 stat lines, cough Dark Magician. But when you summon Wiz Sage Fur Hire onto the board, when she's special summoned from one of your, small Fur Hires or a spell that we'll be talking about real quick, you get small life points. You get 500 life points for each Fur Hire on the board, so 1000 or 1500 life points. Wiz is incredibly infamous for her quick effect, which is that she could negate a spell or trap at the cost of discarding 1 Fur Hire card from your hand. So if you think back to this metagame when Fur Hires were released, decks like Masked Heroes, which were very reliant on spells, cards like Enemy Controller or Mask Change could be negated by Wiz. Or if you think about another deck like Spellbooks, super spell reliant, Wiz negate, which is why she was limited to 2. And when she was limited to 2, as you can see, she was sharing that semi-limit spot with Dompa, so you had to pretty much always run 1 Wiz and 1 Dompa. But now that she's getting off the ban list, we can finally go up to 2 Dompa. that's one option that we'll be discussing. The last card that is commonly played in Fur Hire is their spell, Mayhem Fur Hire. This is a quick play spell with the ability to special summon one of your Fur Hires from the graveyard in defense mode. Notice like you can play this in your enemy's end phase. You could do something like special summon your Dampa from the grave, your Dyna from the grave, and if you have another Fur Hire, it will actually proc their effects. So if you have a Dampa with your Dyna, you can pop something, special summon this in defense, and on your turn now you can switch your Dyna to attack and maybe go for game. Let's go over what Fur Hires look like in the current metagame before the ban list hits. As you can see, we have pretty much a set build. I think Fur Hires right now aren't very inspiring because it's very hard to deviate from the build. You're going to want to run 3 of pretty much all of the small Fur Hires that we can. So 3 Beat, 3 Seal, and 3 Recon, and that already takes up 9 cards in the deck. Then you are pretty much obligated to run 1 Dampa, 1 Wiz, and 1 Dyna. You could possibly argue that you could drop Wiz and just run 2 Dampa, but I guess it's up to preference. Then from there you can fill up with whatever back row you have. I personally think like cards that flip down like Canadia and Floodgate are pretty good because you have access to 3 Recons, which can pop that face down cards. The Mayhems, they're okay. They give the deck a little bit of the ability to recover from losing something like your 1 copy of Dyna. And it also can be used as fuel for Wiz's quick effect negate. I think the issue for Fur Hires is that oftentimes you get a board of 3 creatures and then you just really can't progress because Dyna only has 2500 attack, and that doesn't often like get you there. Even with the most commonly used ability, the Tie That Binds, which gives basically almost always 300 attack to your whole board, it just doesn't break most boards nowadays. In the past, it was oftentimes very easy for Fur Hires to pretty much pop the board with, access to like triple Dampa, and then sometimes you could clear out a back row with like something like Dampa, Recon into Dyna, easy OTKs. But nowadays boards are a lot more difficult to break. So let's talk about like how we can remedy this, as well as think about what the deck would look like in the future. Alrighty, so we have a slightly updated future version of Fur Hires. Things to note are that we have bumped up Wiz Sage Fur Hire up to 2, and this is going to be post ban list when she's off of the ban list, obviously. I don't think we'll need to run 3 Wiz. I think 2 is more than enough. Since Wiz will no longer be competing for the semi-limited spot, we will obviously be bumping up Dampa to 2. One thing to consider is we could possibly run Dampa at 1 and play a powerful semi-limited card such as Enemy Controller or the ever-popular Treacherous Trap Hole. If you do decide to run Treacherous Trap Hole, I think you'll probably want to stick with back rows such as Canadia, because Canadia can essentially get rid of itself by resummoning itself out of the graveyard, so Treacherous will still be live. That's something to consider. Besides that, I think we need ways to deal with big monsters. Obviously, Dyna's not going to cut it in the current metagame. Plasma has been played in the past. Plasma is very nice because you can pretty much suck up any monster that you can't really deal with. Also, oftentimes you'll be flooding the board with a bunch of these weenie Fur Hires, so 1200 attack, 500 attack, and 1000 attack. They really aren't going to be doing the job, so you can special summon Plasma using your first board, and then oftentimes you can follow up with a second wave of Fur Hires that turn. So summon Plasma, maybe you have some resources, then you can do another beat into special summon something like a Wiz or a Dyna, and that's a pretty powerful board. And keep in mind, Plasma probably sucked their monster. Plasma can actually suck up both face up and face down cards. Just keep in mind, if Plasma sucks up a set monster, it doesn't get the stats, but you're effectively removing that card from play. I think this is pretty much like what the build is going to look like in the future, and I'll be testing it out. The most commonly used skill, if you're playing a Plasma build, is Bring It, and Bring It is getting buffed in the upcoming skill rebalancing, where you'll be able to use Bring It before the draw phase, so you can decide once you draw all of your cards which card you don't need the most, and you can swap that for Plasma. Alrighty, this is a little bonus clip of me farming with Aster Phoenix, trying to get the Bring It skill for when the ban list finally hits. We're just playing our version with Plasma here, and we see him in our opening hand. This duel is just a quick demonstration of what you can do with Fur Hires. Obviously, my opponent's deck isn't going to be the most competitive. Let's just let the clip roll, and I'll just talk about some of my thoughts here. So we're going to go open up with Recon, special summon our Seal. We're going to pop a back row, turns out to be an enemy controller, so they're going to just flip our Seal to defense mode, get a little bit of chip damage, and we set our Wall of Disruption. We're going to get swung in on, get Trap Jammer, so we're going to lose our Recon. But it's okay, because we have Seal, so if we top deck any other Fur Hire, we can recoup our Recon, and we're going to do just that. We special summon our Beat, activate our Beat to get our other Seal into our hand, and then now we have 3 on the board, so we can special summon Plasma, and this is going to show Plasma in action. I'll let the cinematic go in real quick. Alrighty, so we have Plasma on the board. Plasma's going to suck up that X-Saber. Then we're going to summon Recon, special summon Dyna, use Recon's ability to pop the back row. We're going to banish some cards from the graveyard, though it doesn't really matter, and we're going to swing for game. So that's just an example of what Fur Hires might be able to do in the future. They're obviously going to become a little bit more consistent once they have access to, both of their Dampas and more Whizzes. That's going to wrap up our recap of Fur Hires. I'm excited to see what they'll bring to the table in the upcoming post-ban list metagame. I'm always a fan of using older decks and seeing if they can survive in a faster paced, newer metagame. Let me know in the comments below if you're excited to revisit Fur Hires as much as I am, and if you enjoyed today's video and want to see more Duel Links and card game content in the future, please support the channel by subscribing to it. It really means a lot. As always, I wish you the best of luck on the ladder in Duel Links and in life. Until next time, peace.